Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to another Supatease video. And it's here, my Midnight Season 1 Moonkin PvP guide. We're going to be covering gear, we're going to be covering embellishments, we're going to be covering talents, we're going to be covering strategies and rotation in order to be the most effective that you can possibly be and maximize the most amount of fun that you can out of your Balanced Druid in Season 1. And as always, if you want to make sure that you're staying up to date with news related to World of Warcraft, educational and entertaining content, then smash that subscribe button. Your support is greatly appreciated. So first things we'll start off with is gear. I feel like this is the main primary factor that people ask a lot about. So what stats do you want to go for as a Balanced Druid? Your main priority is haste, your second priority is versatility, your third priority is mastery, and then crit is your final priority. You really just don't care about it at all, so you want to avoid pieces with it. We're about in the second week now. When it comes to tier set bonuses, I have opted for the 2-set bonus. I have noticed that shooting stars comes out to roughly 10 to 13% of your overall damage. So I do think this set bonus, buffing it by roughly, in PvP when it scales down roughly, I think 20%, actually ends up being a worthwhile amount. And also the 2-set bonus, the stat allocation on the two pieces isn't that terrible, with the helmet being haste and mastery and the gloves being haste and versatility. So I feel like you don't lose out a lot on that. However, the 4-set bonus ends up being a very small amount of damage, like 2% on Star Surge. And right now Star Surge doesn't even really hit that hard, so you're not getting like a huge modifier scaling effect with that. And then you get this small chance to poop out a little bit of AoE damage. It's just not that impactful. And then the secondary stats on the other tier pieces are pretty bad. So I don't think it's worth losing the versatility that you get from the ordinary Conquest PvP gear at this period in time. So I do recommend you get the helmet and gloves as some of your first items and convert those in the Catalyst as soon as you can. You can get 1600 rating in any rated PvP bracket and get access to a charge there, spark there, as well as doing the weekly content in order to get your sparks. And I recommend that you check out my PvP gearing guide. I'll have a link to that at the end of this. So if you want to know how to make all of these pieces, or if something's been confusing and something's missing, you don't want to make a mistake, then that will be a good thing to follow. But right now I'm opting for the 2-set bonus. I have gone for 2 crafted pieces, and I've gone for pieces that have main stat on them, which is intellect, because right now I think intellect is the most important. So you can see here I've crafted the belt, and again, if you watch the guide, you'll know how to go to the crafting table and how to buy everything and how to make this. The embellishment that I've decided to go with, though, is the Arcano Weave, as it's going to be granting you intellect to your ally, basically, and yourself. So just increasing primary stat of your overall team. I found this to be valuable, especially because Moonkin is just kind of doing damage all the time with dots right now. So having that static intellect boost, it just basically amplifies your trinket bonus, which just gives you primary stat. And I like that it buffs an ally as well. The difference between embellishments right now is very minor. It's, again, they're all like about 1% output increase in and about. And it's very hard to actually test them. So I just decided to lean into, you know what, I'm going to focus on primary stat. That's going to be my focus at the moment. There are other ones that focus on proc damage and versatility. I think those are good as well. If you're noticing that you're squishy, which a lot of Balanced Druid players I've seen have given me the feedback is that they struggle to survive. When we get to the gameplay section, we'll go over that. You can go for embellishments that proc your versatility instead, but I think it's your highest secondary, which at the moment will be haste. So you are going to start pushing your haste pretty high. I just decided to go with primary stat because primary stat usually is always a lot of value. So I crafted that on the belt, which I think cost about 4 heraldries, which you get from completing your first rated PvP content. Then I made the chest piece again, because this is a beefy piece, so it's going to save me a lot of conquest also for getting this for free from the heraldries, and it gets me a lot of primary stat just right off the rip. So it gets me a lot of stamina, it gets me a lot of intellect, it makes me a lot more durable, and is going to increase my overall damage the most significantly. So I've allocated my crafting pieces towards belt and chest. I then purchased conquest shoulders once reaching my maximum cap, which again increases our stamina and intellect as well as haste and versatility, and it's giving me the kind of the highest primary stat bonus that I can get basically there. I'm still kind of holding off on buying enchants at this time because enchants and gems are still very expensive, and the market for those is going to drop, and I've still been able to get to the rank 1 position on the ladder in Solo Shuffle on Moonkin even without them. So it doesn't really, like, you can get them if you really feel like you're struggling, you want that tiny bit of an edge and you don't care about gold. But if you do care about gold, prices always drop as soon as demand drops, which will happen very shortly past these first couple of weeks of Mythic Plus and Raid. So I'm kind of just holding out, although putting it on your best in slot, like I could honestly put it on the Epic now and it would be fine, but I don't recommend enchanting any of the honor gear. But basically the main stat enchants are all you're going to be going for, is just focusing around your main stat, primary stat, and increasing that as much as possible. And then movement speed enchants are also a viable option there. as well. And then later on, I'm going to use Conquest to buy more heraldries to get a second crafted ring, so I can get 2 haste verse rings, which is something that's important because if you only go with Conquest, you're only going to be able to get a mastery one. You're only going to be able to get a haste one. But that's the mainstay of the game there. And I think next week or the following week, we're going to get our weapons, so you get that for free. You're going to obviously want to get haste versatility, and that's kind of the rundown of the gear. Just haste, versatility, mastery, and then try to avoid crit as much as possible. 2 set. I'm crafting pieces that have main stat with the free stuff because I think that main stat's giving me the most competitive edge at this point in the season. And then later on, it's still going to be really good because it's a balance of haste and versatility as well in those stat pieces. Now, talent tree, unfortunately, some druids have been trying to convince me that Elun's Chosen is good. I played it at the beginning. It's a lot of rot damage. It can work in Battleground Blitz. Can be fun there with the Starfall build, the instant proc build. But if you're getting into arenas, it just doesn't have the finishing power. It doesn't have the oomph to push it over the edge. So I think Keeper of the Grove is once again going to be dominating in those arena environments. And I think that it's also really good for Battleground Blitz because it gives you better 1v1 potential, which there's a lot of, and it gives you better assassination potential against healers in the game. So to me, it's more well-rounded, but the Starfall build can be funny and brainless, and you instantly running around spamming AoE. So if you want that playstyle, it's an option. But for the most competitive option, I think that this is likely the build that you're going to want to be going for. Some important things to note about is that after you spend some Star Surges, you're going to get instant regrowths, and it's important to use those regrowths on yourself because they will increase your movement speed and they will increase healing towards yourself. So this is an important mechanic that I think a lot of balanced druids don't think about, and that's why they feel squishy, because you're losing out on the movement speed, so you can't kite as effectively, and you're losing out on the healing received, which is going to be normalizing your health bar. So this is a massive mechanic that you need to be paying attention to if you want to increase your survivability on balanced druid at the beginning level, is making sure you're using the instant regrowth procs, which you'll know you have when your regrowth icon on your action bar starts glowing. As soon as it starts glowing, get that thing up, because that's what makes you go fast. That's what makes you get big heals. That is your main focus. With the mushroom talent over here, I might actually just flip into proc mushroom. I've been playing on use, but then you end up being a little bit global cooldown starved. So I'm thinking I might switch back to proc. The only bad thing with the procking one is, well, you can't control when it happens. So it might happen when a target is crowd controlled nearby, like a healer, and then it breaks the healer crowd control. That can backfire on you because for some reason this doesn't have a damage threshold on it for CC. It will pretty much just break any CC as soon as it happens. So if you get the on use, you have more control. But I've noticed that I just don't have a lot of time. But at the same time, it can be nice when people are running away, and then you've got the guarantee that you can AoE slow people behind the pillar. So maybe you don't even need to think about it as damage. You can think of it more of as control and utility also if you have the on use. So it's really up to you. If you want to drop a keybind, get a little bit more passive damage, but not have control of the slow, then you're going to want to go for the proc one of this. But if you want to have control of it, then go for the on use. But it can make you feel a little bit global cooldown starved the way that it is. Our Apex talent is an important component that you're going to want to be aware of, which is that when you activate your Eclipse, you're basically going to shoot out a bunch of damage. And then when you activate your Incarnation, you'll also shoot out a bunch of extra damage. So the reason that is important is because we'll go on the train dummies here, but basically you'll get your dots onto a target, right? So Sunfire and Moonfire. You Sunfire first if there's AoE, multiple people nearby. If there aren't multiple people nearby, you Moonfire first is the priority there. But when you use Eclipse, it's going to shoot at those lasers, right there, a little lunar laser. But when you're in Eclipse, you can go into Incarn, and you can activate Incarn, and then get a double tap. And so the benefits of doing this is that you'll get 2 Dryads, which are going to shoot 2 Star Surges. You can reset all of the modifiers as well, so you'd want to time it around your talent here. I'm forgetting the name of it. Balance of all things here, which gives you a crit modifier. So you can chain them together. So you don't really want to Incarn first. You want to Eclipse first and then chain it into Incarn for a really big burst. So you'll get all your dots on the target. This is a burst rotation. You'll get a mushroom, get the triple dot thread up, pop Trents, and then you'll use Eclipse. Start search a couple times, and then you could just Incarn. You probably want to wait though until Balance of All Things is running low. That was honestly incorrect, but wait until Balance of All Things here starts to fall off, and you can reset that crit modifier, and you can basically string that crit modifier for like an extra 8 seconds when you do that. The reason you want to do it in this order is because if you Incarn first, you can't go into Eclipse. You'd be locked with Incarn. So you can't get that double activation. You can't get that double Dryad. So it depends on if you want to do an all-in, which is going Eclipse to Incarn, or if you want to bait cooldowns, which would be start with Incarn and then go into Eclipse later. And you can kind of flip which one you want to go in depending on the situation, right? Because if you do Eclipse and then immediately into Incarn, like 8 seconds later, you may run out of Eclipse charges, you may run out of Incarns, and then you'll run out of burst. So it's a bit of a risky gamble, but it's an important component that you want to consider because sometimes that surprising amount of damage at the beginning can be really effective. And then other times you might want to stagger them a little bit more, but it's an important component to understand in order to maximize. That's why I recommend it here in the video before we get into the play section of it. But this is the talent build. I'll have my best to have it linked as well in the description down below. There are a couple other things that you may want to flex around as well. This build actually looks a little bit different to me. So with rejuvenation, so basically this is a talent point. Why can't I respec out of this? Am I stuck in combat? I'm stuck in combat, guys. The training dummies are trolling me, bro. I'm just trying to help you guys out, teach you guys some things. The training dummies are like, no. Well, basically, rejuvenation is actually quite a bit of healing. So if you play with a class that has a lot of stuns and you don't need decurse, you can play Rejuve. You can toss up Rejuve. Just note it takes you out of Boomkin form, and then you'll want to go back in. So if you get time where you're kiting, you're running away, your healer, CC, toss out a Rejuve on yourself, get back into Boomkin form. It actually heals for a decent amount, I've noticed. It can actually be a different deal breaker in terms of your survivability. However, if you're playing with no stuns, you might want Rake stun, so you can start an engagement with stun. But even then, I think Rake is a little bit less valuable. I think Rejuve is actually very good for survivability. So flipping between Rejuve and remove corruption when you need to remove Hex is a really important one. When you need to remove Hunter Poison Silence is another one. So Hunters and Shamans, you're going to want remove Corruption. Warlocks, you'll want remove Corruption to remove Curse of Tongues and Curse of Exhaustion from melee. Situationally can be good into Rogues. When you CC a Rogue, you can then dispel the wound poison off their target, and that target will be more likely to recover rapidly if it's the only Mortal Strike. So if the Rogue is the only Mortal Strike. So Rogues, Hunters, Shamans, and Warlocks. Remove corruption can actually be really good, so you'd swap rejuvenation out for that. But other than that, I find rejuvenation very effective for survivability. And it's nice when you're going to like solo missions, world PvP, and that type of stuff. It's going to give you good recovery on top of the instant regrowths and then the frenzied regens as well. Another talent here is the bash talent. So when you don't have a lot of stuns, I think it's a really good idea to take bash. So if you're playing like a mage, right, they don't have stuns, you're double caster, you're going to want some lockdown. Bash is good there. However, if you're playing with like a rogue or a warrior, incapacitating roar can be nice because you can peel melee, get cyclones with it. The damage break on it is a decent threshold. It can sometimes break to dots, but most of the time it won't. So you can get incap roar. That's where the dangers of running the proc mushroom are. So you go for an incap roar and your mushroom procs, and that incap breaks, you're going to be sad. But at the same time, if you're not able to use the on use a lot, then you're just losing damage globals there a lot of the time. So it's a little bit tough there. But the incap roar is really good. So if you got melee chasing you a lot, you get the double incap. You can get double mass entangle roots on them to kite them and run circles around them while keeping regrowth up and putting up rejuve when you get distance. And another thing is that Heart of the Wild's a lot different now. I've found the best use of it is honestly wild growth. They buffed a lot of the healing and rejuvenation and wild growth this expansion. Before they were useless, you'd never even acknowledge them. But basically, if you're out of shapeshift form, or even if you're in Boomkin form, and you press Heart of the Wild, it's going to use a wild growth. And that wild growth heals a lot. Look at that, like above 10k a second. It heals a lot. I see a lot of Boomkins. I think they make the mistake of using the bear form one, which gives you more maximum health. It does not feel nearly as effective as using the wild growth. But the wild growth can be tough to squeeze through because you don't want to get stunned out of form. So you got to be very careful with when you're timing it, which is honestly really good gameplay on Blizzard's part for Boomkin, and it makes you feel a lot more like a hybrid. So you got to risk reward it. Like, am I scared of dying right now? Am I going to get stunned, or am I, safely away? Can I use it on an ally? I've found that the wild growth and the instant regrowth and the rejuvenations can actually be really effective at keeping yourself alive or keeping your allies alive. So I would definitely recommend it. PvP talents, you pretty much always play Alkan Adept and Moonkin Aura. We're just never really going to change those. Fairy Swarm, though, is one that you do rotate. So against targets that you can disarm, like Rogue, Hunter, well, particularly Marksman Hunter, Warriors, Death Knights. Demon Hunter is also a sleeper one with Havoc. When you disarm their I-beam, they'll eventually retreat, which means they can't use it to avoid your other crowd controls. So it's nice. It soaks that away. It gets them to move away from you too instead of attacking you after the I-beam. So Fairy Storm, it can actually be really nice for melee DPS if you're struggling a lot with melee DPS. Another one, if there aren't any melee DPS that you got to really worry about with high priority disarms, is that High Winds. It's extra range, really nice for getting cyclones, especially if you know that you're going to get attacked, or even if you know you're not going to get attacked and you just want that extra range. It's really good for that. Sometimes if you want to go like hyper defense mode, I will take Tireless Pursuit. So there's a lot of melee and I just want to run, go. You can take this one and you can spam travel form. You can just run and stay alive and really kite very well with it. Can be nice in Battlegrounds as well for just getting base to base to base. And then Protector of the Grove is also a really good one for Battlegrounds for tossing out off heals on off carts and things like that. So if you're in like 2v2 situations, this gives you a huge amount of burst healing and can be really nice. Dying Stars, unfortunately, is still just a dead talent. It applies a vulnerable debuff to the target that dispels, which just doesn't really, like, you'd maybe be able to pull this off in Battlegrounds as the Elune Chosen build with Starfall, but even then I think Starburst would just give you more damage with the Starfall build instead, and call down extra burst, knock healers in the air is way better than this, you know, kind of piss extra damage increase. It's just like, I don't even know how much they'd have to buff this. It's just not it's probably the worst dispel protection in the game, in my opinion at the moment, between all the dispel protections on all the classes. So I don't really take this one anymore, and that's the general thought process there. Not a huge amount of talent flipping, which is honestly nice. I don't like the brain drain on being able to decide what talents I need to flip around and what talents I don't need to flip around. So we've covered the talents, covered some of the rotation, we've covered the gearing and the stat allocation that we're going for the Balance Druid. So let's jump into some gameplay here and run you down what it looks like actually in practice, because I know that can be the most intimidating portion of this, and the one that's the most important to be effective at. Okay guys, so here we've got a lobby with some of the best specializations in the game: Subtlety Rogue, Fire Mage, and Windwalker Monk. You're going to encounter these a lot, so the strategies in this portion of the video are going to be very valuable. We are running that Fairy Swarm for the disarm here, and we've opted to get the Rake Stun, as it's really good against rogues in the opener. You can sneak up on them and stop them on their opener with a Rake Stun, so we can see a sap. So we're thinking about Rake Stun and where the rogue could be to use Wild Charge to jump to them, basically. So we see the rogue open, we want to try and get here and Rake Stun. We get a stun on the rogue, we'll Root Beam the mage in the opener to stop any sort of burst, and if the priest dispels the Root Beam, we can then disarm the rogue and they won't be able to dispel it. So now we're going to line of sight. Rogue is Shadow Dance and Shadow Blades. They can see that on their health bar on the left side of the health bar. So we'll just knock them, stay in bear, line of sight them. If you avoid that window, they're going to have to commit more cooldowns to stun you again, and it can become more predictable. Against Rogue, just always move away from them. Look at that. I forced him to Shadow Step to me, which is important because now he can't Shadow Step to my healer and then Shadow Step back to me. My Windwalker pretty much just soloed the mage while I was cheap shot. That's why you're going to see these specs a lot. Now we swap to the Rogue, obviously, while the mage is immune in Ice Block, and we kind of cleave the Rogue down here. I can go through evasion, so I'm going to try and finish him, but he vanishes. I'm not off Sunday yet, but it's probably pretty soon. So you can see that I'm always moving away from the rogue though, and I'm moving towards the priest to try and get a cyclone here. Get a cyclone out of the paralyze. Mage casting Ice Wall, which is going to line of sight our healer from our team here. I'm trying to blast the mage a bit, but honestly I should have been thinking about cloning rogue here. It's a bit scary with how low the monk had ultimately gotten there. We recover regardless, but it would have been a good idea. We get DB'd into a smoke bomb, so we're going to bark skin. Sometimes trinketing can be a good idea, but I think trinketing during blades is a bit stronger, and Barkskin is honestly really strong with the buffs they made to the talent to it, so you can rely on Barkskin a little bit more. If it's combust blades, you might not survive through Barkskin alone. Here we use Mushroom to snare the rogue. You see the priest tried to dispel it there. We're going to drop down our Force of Nature. We're going to go into Eclipse here in a moment, or we're already in Eclipse. Drop Force of Nature and just spam some Star Surges, Starfires. I'm trying to pre-bear because I see Polymorph being casted. We see Incap Roar here, really valuable. Combust during the poly, I double Incap DPS, I knock them, I root them, we double stun them. I might have been really in trouble there during that combust window, but the incapacitating roar allowed me to CC both targets, knock them back, and get into a position where hopefully my paladin will be able to save me. Ultimately though, we have to bubble. Rogue catches me in a cheap shot. This is why it's like super scary against this type of composition. You got to be really on your toes. They can catch you off guard even for a moment and you just absolutely get erased. Our paladin's in a fear. I solar beam the sheep, so that way my monk isn't out of the game. Hopefully my paladin will save me at 1%. I jump into bear form. I'm spamming frenzied regen. It's shadow blades up on the rogue, so do want to hug bear form here. In a lot of cases when you've got a strong DPS like a Windwalker on your team, you can kind of just run and hide and they will maybe carry the game for you. You don't want to do it the whole time, but like now I have no skin for a second and no trinket, so I'd rather just wait behind the pillar and buy some time. Let the Windwalker get pressure, just kind of poke and keep dots up and stay out of line of sight of the priest. So the Discipline Priest adds a lot of damage. You can see him doing just under the Fire Mage here. So if I stay behind the pillar, it's just going to be the rogue and mage will have to blink to hit me, which means the Windwalker gets more uptime and I'm not going to get hit by the priest. So this is a safer position. You can tell at the beginning I was playing offensive, but as soon as our paladin has no trinket, no bubble, they used them right there earlier on. And if I have no trinket, no skin, we got to pull back. We got to play defensive until we get those cooldowns available again for a big push. Double Incap Roar again, really valuable. Knockback, so double Incap, double knockback, double roots can be really strong, but I also want to get a root beam on the healer, so we're not going to use the root on the rogue here. I want to get a solar beam. Priest has no trinket, although I see combust, so root beaming the combust could also be a really good option right now. I decided to risk the biscuit, and mostly because the rogue was standing next to him, so root beam on priest will also hit the rogue and then he can't dispel, so they're both stuck together. We pop our incarn here and we just absolutely crack him. We just take him down, instant smack here for round number 1. So the lesson of that round is that you can play aggressive when you have defensive cooldowns to survive. When your team is running dry or low, play defensive. Honestly, most of the time playing defensive is been better, especially in solo shuffle. Now, if you're more coordinated, you know you can keep track of everything a little bit better. Now, obviously, since add-ons are gone and you can't track the cooldowns like 3v3, then you can afford to play more aggressive. But I've noticed that it's just usually better to be cautious, especially against these high burst, high volatile specializations like Fire Mage and Subtlety Rogue, because they can just mow you down if you make even one mistake, one misplaced position. So you saw how much better it got for us in terms of survivability when I pulled back behind the pillar. So if you're having a hard time surviving, play like I did in the second half of the game for more of it and play less aggressive until they stop attacking you. You can kind of force them to stop attacking you. Now we got the Paladin on the team, so same type of deal. I want to get that Rake on the Rogue, so I'm just spamming my target Arena 2, and I'm spamming Wild Charge so I can jump and get a Rake stun, hopefully without getting pulled out. But I get pulled out when I move in here, which is now super awkward because the Rogue isn't stunned. So the Paladin Consecrate hit me, which is why I think Rake stun can be unreliable, but I still do like it into Rogue. We disarmed the Rogue here, and we probably should go into Bear, but I bark skinned instead through the combustion. I think going Bear there probably would have been wise, though, because this is super sketchy to just trust that bark skin is going to be enough. They get our Auto Frenzy. We're going to pop our Eclipse here. You can see I started with Eclipse, I believe, and then we went into Incarn, so we get that double tap, and we get that double balance of all things. Crit modifier to try and get a little bit of extra damage squeezed out, because honestly, a Mage is pretty tough to kill as a Balancer, and so is a Subtlety Rogue. The barriers and the off-healing, it can be very difficult to rot through. We're caught in a Smoke Bomb, so we'll wall charge out with Bear Form mid-air and then pop a Frenzy Regen, and look at that, I'm just immediately going back to the pillar. So I learned my lesson from the first round. I was like, yeah, going and pushing out in too much aggression gets you in a really tight situation. So we're just hugging Bear and running around the pillar and healing ourselves. So this is where if I was playing Rejuvenation instead of Rake, I'd throw up a Rejuve as well. And if it was a really big emergency, I would Wild Growth to get a big hot. We're going to go and activate an Eclipse here, and then we double tap. So that was Eclipse into Incarn. So that gives us the double Lunar Bolt procs. Although I could have held it for a little bit, but the double Dryad is also just really nice to get a little bit of extra burst damage in that window. Unfortunately, the Mage altered, so I'm switching to the Paladin for a second. Paladins do redirect a lot of damage to themselves, so attacking Paladins can be really valuable. You do want to keep kind of dot spread on everything. We incap Rogue and Typhoon. That's a really good tactic against into any melee DPS that's attacking you. Just incap Roar, Typhoon, and you can mass root if you don't have a beam, right? You'll be able to mass root every 30, so you'll be able to get a root beam on the healer, and then you can use the next root with an incap on the DPS, and you can kind of get a lot of distance there and not get attacked as much. And you can see I'm forcing them to go on the other guy because the Mage can't come in here, and now I'm able to free cast. So this is why, you know, the gameplay portion of this video is really important to watch. Is the strategy can also make things a lot easier for yourself. Just make yourself annoying to attack. So I'm pulling back with the pillar here with the healer. I'm disarming the Rogue. I'm tanking kicks because he's already disarmed, and then I'll be able to cast. I could also use Wild Growth here if I really needed to get a really big boost of heals, but we got the kick out of the way, so let's clone the Rogue up, drop down some Trents here, drop a Solar Beam on the Poly, go into Eclipse. You can't blink from the Windwalker, and that's going to allow us to connect a lot of damage. So sometimes kicking Polymorph is really good in terms of an aggressive maneuver, and especially when you're fighting a Paladin who can generally get out of your root beams with their Pony talent, where they mount up on a Pony in silence and they get freedom. You kind of want to use it as an interrupt. Paladins don't cast a lot, so using it on Polymorph against a Mage will stop them from blinking, limit their mobility, and it silences them too for a second, so they can't barrier. So it can give you a nice little surprise attack there, and that got us the opportunity to actually get cauterized from the Mage. So I do find that can be a good trade-off. We're going to just bark skin the Kidney Shot here during the dance. Even though it's just the Subtlety Rogue, you're a Boomkin, it's tough to survive. And he also popped Combustion, so this could be super stressful. Honestly, I'm doing a bad job of using the instant regrowth. You see here right now when I wrapped around the corner, I used it. You want to try to keep that instant regrowth up as much as possible. Honestly, if you're fighting a Boomkin, it's important to try and purge it. It's actually huge. It's 16% movement speed, 16% healing received. It's literally the main mechanic that determines whether you live or die. It's actually one of the reasons also I think that Keeper of the Grove is better than Elune. Is because of that defensive mitigation. So here I Solar Beam the Paladin, and we get the Mage really low. Could have Solar Beamed the Poly, but the Paladin's kind of just chilling it, and he's also using Melee Wing, so I don't think the Solar Beam was really even that effective there. I was probably better off using it on the Mage instead, on the Polymorphs to limit the blinks and to limit the crowd control. We end up just doing a bunch of damage and KOing him anyways, and we're doing top damage still. So that's the name of the game there. If you're having a tough time with melee DPS, run away from them, incap Typhoon into Mass Root, pull away, keep dots up as you can, go into Eclipse before you Star Surge. If you want to do the double burst, you could do Eclipse and then into Incarn to get the double Dryad, double kind of stacked there. If you really want to chain, like, I think the surprise factor is more valuable generally at the moment, just because people can recover really quickly, especially the best healers. So I'd go for the double tap a little quicker with the Eclipse into Incarn, but either way, it's going to work for you. So I hope that these tips, this rundown of the gameplay and the guide helps you out with your bounce theory, because I've actually been having a lot of fun on it. So when I hear you guys coming in my stream saying you're struggling with it and you're having a hard time with it, it does make me feel a little bit sad. So hopefully this video will help level you up and enable you to get more enjoyment out of the specialization. But that's it for me here today. Thank you guys very much for watching the video, and I will see you in the next one.